Howdy, howdy, this is Mr. Potter. In this video, we're going to discuss our first performance task of the year. So before we get into the discussion, I kind of want to talk about what a performance task is. So for the computer science principles class, for the AP exam that people taking the computer science principles class are preparing for, there's two components. The first part is the multiple choice test, which most AP exams have. The second part, instead of a free response like a typical computer science AP exam, we have performance tasks. In other words, we have to show throughout our progress in the course that we are able to produce what we call digital artifacts. And there's two basic performance tasks that we're looking at. One is going to be an explore performance task. So in other words, we're going to have to explore an innovation of computing concepts. We're going to talk about the stuff that we've learned in class, how it affects real life. And the second part is the create aspect. In other words, we're going to create a program that performs a particular task, solves a particular problem, but more important than the actual process is the understanding that comes behind it. We're going to have to justify, we're going to have to explain, we're going to have to essentially prove that our digital artifact does everything that it's supposed to do. And each task is supposed to make students analyze their work, whether it's research or creation of an artifact like a video or a spreadsheet or a graph or a program or whatever we come up with. Now, in our previous lecture, we talked about how to condense text, and what we looked about, there were four main ideas. One idea was that whenever we saw a phrase that was repeated, we just kind of looked for that repeated phrase. So here I'm highlighting them in yellow. Every time I see a crooked, I know that I can replace a crooked with some number, like a number 1. And then I can look, if I don't have any more repeated phrases, then I can just look at repeated words, like crooked. I know that crooked shows up here and here, so I could give that a number 2. And then I'm going to look for parts of a word. And of course, rhyming in the nursery rhymes was something that we saw. So we have this mile and style, so the ILE parts rhymed. I could also look at mouse and house, those parts of the words. Notice that we're talking about the endings of the words. And I could label these respectively as 3 and 4. Now notice I didn't highlight the punctuation because the punctuation is not repeated in either of these cases. I could also have done bought and caught, which I forgot to mark, so let's take care of that. But we did a whole video breaking down what we're looking for here. What we're doing here in our performance task, however, is we're going to have to produce some digital artifact that justifies this. So I'm actually going to go over to Google Docs. So this is the document that you will receive from your teacher. This is the one that I'm handing out to my class. The one you get from your teacher may look a little different, but keep in mind what we're doing is we're creating a text document regarding compressing a nursery rhyme, looking for repetitive phrases, words, and character patterns. So what's going to happen is everyone in the class is going to be given a different nursery rhyme, and they're going to have to perform the text compression that we talked about on it. Now, I'm going to give you several days in the lab to work on this, and this is kind of what I'm suggesting that you do in our lab. So for the first day, we're going to be looking at this, getting an idea of what compression can be performed. Remember that things that we're looking for are repeated phrases, repeated words, repeated character patterns, and we identified them with a number. And then we ended up replacing all other instances of that phrase with the same identifying number. That's what we did in our day 8 video. Then we're going to have to come up with some type of process, some justification of how we perform the compression. So in other words, we should identify how we found those repetitive phrases, words, or character patterns, and how we're sure that we've gotten them all. And we have to write some type of justification for that. I'm looking for a couple of paragraphs for this justification. We also need to talk about how to uncompress. In other words, if I'm given a poem with nothing but, these marks and these numbers on it, how can I come up with the original poem? And that's what we're going to be working on the third day. So we're going to explain the process of uncompressing. So we need to be able to identify all places where a substitution needs to take place and making sure that we've identified all such patterns. So we're going to be doing this in an essay document. So keep in mind what we're looking for is we're looking for an explanation of the compression of the nursery rhyme, our original uncompressed nursery rhyme, and then a compressed nursery rhyme, followed by some type of explanation of how decompression will be achieved. In other words, what process are we going to do to get back our original nursery rhyme, what the decompressed nursery rhyme is when we follow those steps, which should be very similar to our uncompressed nursery rhyme. And then we're going to talk about how effective our compression technique. Keep in mind that all of these aspects will actually vary based on the nursery rhyme we have. Some nursery rhymes are extremely repetitive, and some are very little repetitive, using instead the patterns of numbers, which don't repeat as much as opposed to the pattern of words. So what's going to happen is you're probably going to have in your Google Drive, if you go to drive.google.com, I've created a folder called CSP Performance Tasks. And what I want to do is I want to create a new Google Doc. So this is going to be a Google document, and I'm going to go ahead and change the title to this up here to Day 1, and this is going to be Text Compression. So this is going to be our text compression lab. And inside the Google Doc, I'm going to talk about several things. I'm going to explain how I compress my rhyme. I'm also going to put my rhyme here. So in other words, the uncompressed rhyme. And then I'm going to need to give my compressed rhyme. And of course, this is going to be my rhyme with all the different parts marked out and numbers replacing them. And after that, then I'm going to explain how to uncompress the rhyme. And keep in mind that this part up here where I talk about my compression and this part here where I talk about my decompression, those are essays, and each one should be about at least 2 paragraphs long, because I'm detailing a process. I'm basically giving instructions, what we call in computer science an algorithm of how to compress and how to decompress. Then once I followed those steps, I need to show the decompressed rhyme. And then I have the analysis of effectiveness. Because not only do I need to know how to compress and decompress, but I need to know if I did a good job or if I didn't really gain much space saving from the compression. So you may want to do some type of analysis of how many characters were saved by replacing phrases with numerical characters. And one of the things you'll notice is that none of the poems or none of the rhymes that you have actually have physical digits in them. They have the numbers spelled out, so ONE and TWO for 1 and 2 respectively. So this brings up to the point of submission. So the idea behind submission is that I want to create a digital artifact, something that's going to stand. And Word documents and Google documents are malleable. So what we're going to need to do is to create some type of PDF, and you're going to email this to your teacher. And I'm going to talk about how to do this. So you're going to go up to File, and then you've got this Publish to the Web. So I could click on this Publish to the Web, and when I do that, I can actually create a document where other people can see this. So that's one way that I could do this. Another way that I could do this is I could email as an attachment. And notice that when I email as an attachment, it says attach as a PDF. And PDFs tend to be more restrictive than document files, whether it's a Google Doc or a Word document or some other word processor document. Because we're looking at this from a PDF standpoint, this is kind of a fixed document. This should be kind of your final presentation. So you're going to type in your teacher's email. So if this was me, then it would be mistapotta@gmail.com. That's the email that we use here. And then I've got my subject, which is going to be the title of our document. This really should say Unit 1, not Day 1. And then, of course, make sure that you put performance task. because this is our performance task here, and a little message to your teacher explaining what you're sending it to them and why. It's always nice to not just send a file, but also to explain what you're doing with the file. You may want to check send a copy to myself, and if you don't get that copy, then your teacher may not have gotten that copy. Also, be aware that some school systems have spam filters, but things from the Google Drive should make it through to your teacher, and then you will just click send. So that's the process about what we're looking for our first performance task, and also how you're going to submit it to your teacher. So once again, this is Mr. Potter. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.